It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. By the way, you can follow me on the socials. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and also Facebook, all three at Dan Mandis Show. And the left is pushing this 14th Amendment to get rid of Donald Trump. It seems like every single day there is another story about this. And as time goes on, these stories become more frequent and the calls are becoming louder. Now, I mentioned this previously in one of the earlier segments. I want to complete this segment. The 14th Amendment, what it does is it disqualifies or bans a person from holding federal office if they have taken an oath as an officer of the United States, but then ultimately they engage in an insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So this is what's interesting. You've got the left, it's the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and they're saying that because Donald Trump, this is what they're saying, that since Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection, engaged in a rebellion, that or that he gave aid or comfort, apparently, that he should not be allowed to run for the presidency. Now, what's changing is that now states, because it's become clear that they can't do this at the federal level, but now states are looking at removing Donald Trump from their ballots. And obviously, if you take the president, the former president, off of ballots, he's not going to win, specifically in some of those battleground states. For example, if they take him off the ballot in Michigan or in Pennsylvania, then he just simply cannot win. But see, the president, he's not even charged with an insurrection. The charges have nothing to do with what the 14th Amendment does. And so Jonathan Turley, he is, of course, you know who he is. He's a constitutionalist and a professor at George Washington University. And he was on Fox News the other day talking about this notion that the Democrats could remove Donald Trump from the ballots based on the 14th Amendment. He says, I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Well, quite frankly, I think this is the single most dangerous constitutional theory I've seen pop up in decades. I mean, this is an argument that under the 14th Amendment, Donald Trump can be barred from running again, from ever holding office in the federal government because he violated his oath. He supported an insurrection or rebellion.
Yeah, but again, he's not charged with that. And so I don't know how they could justify this. But, here's the thing. In these states, they don't necessarily, and this is what angers me, is that they don't need to justify it. They just do it. And by the way, and we got into this earlier, it also depends on how you describe January 6th. Some call it an insurrection. Others call it vandalism, trespassing, a riot. I call it a protest that got out of hand. But here's the thing. If you go down this road of Section 3, Amendment, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, you go down this road of giving aid or comfort to the enemies, right? Well, go down this road. Because if you support using the 14th Amendment to keep Donald Trump out of office because he supported this insurrection, he didn't, and he gave aid and comfort to the enemies, he didn't, then what about all the other people who were complicit? For example, Nancy Pelosi refusing the additional security that Donald Trump approved. The failures at the FBI where they knew there was going to be trouble, but they didn't tell the guy in charge of Capitol Police that day that they had received all of these various threats. Remember Stephen Sund. Now, Stephen Sund, he was on with Tucker Carlson, and he was that guy. He was in charge of the Capitol Police on that fateful day. And he was on with Tucker Carlson, and he talked about the intelligence failures, if that's what you want to call it.
But coming into it, absolutely zero with the intelligence that we know now existed, talking about attacking the Capitol, killing my police officers, attacking members of Congress and killing members of Congress. None of that was included in the intelligence coming up to.
That you received.
Correct.
So why wouldn't they give him that intelligence? Why wouldn't the folks in charge, and he just mentioned the various organizations, why wouldn't they tell him of these threats? It could seem to me that if Nancy Pelosi refused to accept the additional security that Donald Trump approved because they were afraid of the optics, doesn't that in reality give aid and comfort to the enemy? I mean, if you were going to call the January 6ers the enemy, then Nancy Pelosi gave aid to the enemy by not having appropriate security. You could also go down, again, the road of these various agencies who did not share the intelligence with the guy in charge of Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, who, as I just played you the audio from Tucker Carlson, he says they didn't tell me any of the threats that had come in, at least not to the magnitude that they should have. So all that he knew, Stephen Sund knew, was that these threats were there, but nobody thought to tell the guy in charge of the facility to the extent that these threats were so dangerous. The Capitol building, it almost looks like they kind of wanted some sort of violence. That's what it seems like to me, that they wanted the violence. I call it willful ineptitude. Because remember, if you go down this road, and it may be a rabbit hole for some, but Nancy Pelosi and all of these folks within the intelligence agencies and so forth, they knew that violence was going to happen. Why wouldn't they accept additional security? Why wouldn't they tell the guy in charge? Because they wanted the violence. Because if the violence happened, then they could use this violence to go after Donald Trump, to kick conservatives off of social media, to get Parler off of the internet as well. And maybe perhaps take down talk radio. I don't know. But they certainly did politicize what happened on January 6th. That played right into their hands. I said this on day one. You had the FBI. You had DHS. You even had the military, who all had this intel, but they never told the Capitol Police. That's an issue.
No, the intelligence, no coordination, no discussion in advance. It's almost like they wanted it to be watered down, the intelligence to be watered down for some reason. It wasn't right, the way the intelligence was handled and the way out we were set up on the Hill.
Yeah, they were set up. So, yes, there's a lot here. And this notion that Donald Trump just got up and inspired all of these folks to go to the Capitol and do what they did is simply not true. But these defenders of democracy, right? The defenders of democracy, put democracy in air quotes, will try and use the 14th Amendment to destroy democracy and take out the guy that millions of Americans plan on voting for. You see how crazy that is? Do you see how wrong that is? Here's more from Jonathan Turley.
But that doesn't mean that it was a rebellion or insurrection. One of the things I've asked is, what exactly was the plan? The military had already supported the transition to the new presidency. Most Republicans had already supported it. The vice president supported it. All the courts supported it. So where was the plan for this rebellion? We have a relatively small number of people who were charged and some convicted of a seditious conspiracy. That crime can be a conspiracy to stop legal proceedings. It's not synonymous with a rebellion or insurrection. But there's a relatively small number of people that received that charge. Donald Trump was not one of them. So this is a considerable reach in my view, and it's dangerous. It could not come at a worse time for this country.
No, let me tell you something, friends. And it is so clear that the Democrats, the progressives, the media, they don't care about America being divided. They don't care about Americans being united. This is going to be if they continue to go down this road, and if they refuse to allow Donald Trump on the ballot at the state level in some of these battleground states, then this will be the absolute most divisive thing that the Democrats would do. And make no mistake, this would be the Democrats coordinating with these local states to keep Donald Trump off of the ballot. And let me tell you something. That would be the most divisive and ununifying thing that the Democrats could ever do. And their partners in the media will clearly stand right by this plot. And again, like to say that they are defending democracy when clearly, seems to me what they're going to try to do is destroy democracy. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
Now that the U.S. has requested a dispute settlement panel within the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement to resolve issues with Mexico's policy on biotech products such as genetically modified corn, what might the process itself and its timeline look like? U.S. Trade Representative's Office Chief Agricultural Negotiator Doug McCaleb explains.
The process would include actually establishing the panel members, or the judges in this case. Once the panel is established, there will be a period where the participants are able to argue and bring their case and evidence to the USMCA panel. We would anticipate this entire process to wrap up in early 2024, certainly by mid-2024.
The ambassador also points out,
we were also pleased that Canada has decided to join this case as well, along with the United States.
He also notes this is a unique case in that it is the first USMCA dispute settlement panel addressing a sanitary and phytosanitary trade matter. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report is made possible by Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Diesel and Citgo Lubricants.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I want to say hello to Billy calling from New Haven, Connecticut on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Billy, how are you?
Good. I have, first of all, an opinion why I think they have to get Donald Trump off the ballot. But isn't it insurrection? How come no one brought guns? It was supposed to be an insurrection.
That's a good point.
Takeover. You know what I mean? We didn't have any right or wrong. I mean, we're just going to go in there and take over with words. So that's a farce. And if you remember, they were bailing out back in the Black Lives Matter days in the Summer of Love. They were bailing out guys who went to prison on the Antifa side. Kept bailing them out so they can go back out and cause more trouble. I mean, it's just so unbelievable when you think about it. But my opinion on Trump is, if you remember, there were like 5 or 6 states that had a border pipe break, or we didn't have enough people, we're going to close down tonight and count the ballots tomorrow. 5 or 6 states counted all through the night. Remember, they boarded up the windows, wouldn't let anyone in, because they figured Donald Trump was going to do good. They didn't know how many people really voted for him. They in a panic. That's why they had to shut everything down and make millions of ballots just to keep up. So they know that they have so many people are going to voted for this man and that will do it again. They can't have him on the ballot because they know this time they won't get away with that, shutting down for 8 hours and letting no one look at anyone counting the ballots for them.
Well, and what I would say, and I appreciate the call, what I would say to all of that, without getting into all of the various states and all the weirdness that happened in, Georgia, in Michigan, and some of these other places, but you are right. I mean, when you look at what's going on with former President Donald Trump, you look at the polling, and the higher that Trump goes, that this is part of what I find so comical about this whole thing, is the higher that this goes, as far as his polling goes, the more you do have people screaming about the 14th Amendment. And again, I appreciate your call. Very quickly, let's say hello to Robert. I'm running out of time this morning. Robert in Joplin, Missouri on Red Eye Radio. Robert, how are you, man?
Thanks for taking my call, Dan. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, there was a comment about a half hour ago about socialism. I'd like to remind everyone about Hugo Chavez, what happened in Venezuela. First thing they did was take over the petroleum industry. First thing Biden did when he became president, the fake president, he took over shut down our petroleum industry. And I think that the January 6th one was an intelligence operation conducted by our national intelligence community, such as the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and so on and so forth. And it was suckered. Why was Nancy Pelosi sitting in the Capitol building waiting to punch Donald Trump in the face?
Yes, I remember that all too well, and thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Yeah, we had a conversation earlier. I don't even know what brought it up. Something about socialism and how the progressives and the media, they're all sort of working together to promote and try and drive America towards socialism. And I thought that was a good conversation. Very much appreciate the call. I just saw this during the break, and I've just got to relate this to you. And forgive me, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is the headline. You ready? Kevin Costner's wife, Christine Baumgartner, somebody cue the violins. She is now going to have to, quote, enter the workforce after her child support was cut in half. So she was getting, now realize the kids are 16, 14, and 13. 3 kids. And so there was a ruling that Costner had to pay $129,755 to his ex-wife, or they're separated, whatever, in July. So basically, she was asking for $130,000 every single month for these 3 kids from Kevin Costner. Now, the whole point of child support is, you want to keep the family in the current, way that they're living, the lifestyle and so forth. And part of what she said was that a luxurious lifestyle was in the kids' DNA at that point in their lives. Claiming to People magazine that her extravagant lifestyle and the extravagant lifestyle of the children, it is an experience, and the family home is a community. And now, because they cut the child support, she's going to have to enter the workforce. You know how much money she's going to be making every single month, which is going to force her into back into the workforce? Well, part of what she's doing is she is renting a $40,000 a month rental home in Montecito, California. And so I'm the first guy I'm reading this and I'm like, well, wait a minute. So number one, I happen to know that Montecito is a really, really rich place. Number two, you don't have to rent a place that's $40,000 a month, and now you're being, quote, forced back into the workforce. Come on. I don't know who it is that she's trying to kid. And listen, I'm not saying that Kevin Costner shouldn't pay child support. Of course, he should pay for child support. He should pay for his kids. That is any man's or woman's obligation, is to pay for the children. And if the man has primary custody, then the woman should pay child support. And if the woman has primary custody, then the man should pay child support. I do find it funny that she is out there trying to make the rounds. This Christine Baumgartner, the ex-wife of Kevin Costner, she's out there trying to, get the violins to play for her, as she is now saying that she's going to have to re-enter the workforce or enter the workforce, and because she can't possibly afford her $40,000 a month Montecito rental. Good Lord. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Eric and Gary, they return next Sunday night, Monday morning. Looking forward to their return. We've covered a lot of topics this evening, and one of the topics that got a lot of attention, a lot of people responded to it on my social media. By the way, you can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram as well. We're talking about, and COVID is everywhere, right? You've noticed that. COVID is everywhere. And so it clearly seems like the media and Jill Biden, the president's wife, has COVID. And so now the president is, out there. He's saying that he's going to wear a mask. I want to remind you of one of the campaign promises that Joe Biden campaigned on.
I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country, but I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
Well, in actuality, what Joe Biden did was he shut down a lot of people's careers, including people in the military, by mandating a vaccine.
I'll shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus. What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
I mean, he went on for months
Federal solution.
saying that he was going to shut down the virus. And so I guess I'm a little confused as to why it is now that, Jill Biden has COVID. Because remember, the president said when he was running, his campaign promise was that he was going to shut down the virus. Well, now we have a number of things going on because there is a variant, and people are now starting to panic again, and you've got people that are saying that mask mandates are going to come back, and it does look like there are some entities out there that are stupidly, seemingly bringing back mask mandates. And so when you look at it, and here's just a couple of real quick headlines. Maryland Public Elementary School is reinstating COVID mask requirements and demanding that third graders wear N95 masks. And so you're just seeing across America, they've got some in New York that's going on. And so you're starting to see some of these mask mandates starting to, dot the landscape across America again. And so that, of course, has started a round of people. I mean, millions of people that are out there basically saying that they will not comply. Yesterday, we played the audio from Dr. Anthony Fauci, as a matter of fact. He was out there saying, shut up, Anthony. He was out there talking about how he was worried that people were not going to comply with the CDC's recommendations. And, of course, the CDC still, in its infinite wisdom, is recommending masks to prevent COVID, which is crazy because, we've had all of these vaccines. We've had all of these booster shots. Yet we still have, yet another variant out there. And so, the powers that be over there at the CDC and these people with, their love of masks, their worship of masks, they're saying, well, a mask will take care of it. Well, no, it won't. No, it won't. Here's the problem. Here's the deal, folks. People are going to get COVID. You can't prevent it. And most logical scientists and doctors that I've been speaking with since this whole thing started, and the people that I read and the people that I follow, they have all been saying since really we started to come to terms with what COVID was, we all said, you know what? COVID's never going to go away. We're going to have to learn how to live alongside it, like we've learned to live alongside the flu and some of these other, illnesses and virus that go around. And so when Biden was out there and he's campaigning, talking about how he is going to shut down the virus.
I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country, but I'm going to shut down the virus.
People were saying you can't do that. You can't shut down the virus. It's always going to be there. And it doesn't even matter, quite frankly, how many vaccines you get, how many boosters you get. These kinds of viruses, and frankly, man-made viruses or man-manipulated viruses at that, there's always going to be a variant. And so I knew when Biden was running around, talking like that he was full of BS. Well, now this from the Daily Mail, because we are getting more cases in, and the more cases of COVID that we get in, the more we are able to, sort of root around and study this thing. So this is the headline: why BA.286 COVID strain is just another scariant. Did you see what they did there? Scariant. Global studies are now finding the variant is actually less contagious and less deadly than previous versions. Well, everybody knows that you went from, COVID to, Delta, there was Omicron, there was other ones, all the different variants. But really, after Delta, I think, was Omicron, right? And Omicron was one of those that was, and people were saying, scientists were saying that this is the one where a whole bunch of people, millions of people across the country will get their antibodies. They'll get it, and then they'll have that natural immunity to it. Well, this apparently is less lethal than even Omicron. So I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of this to you. I'm not going to read the whole article. But they say that early results from lab tests suggest warnings over this BA.286 may be overblown. You don't say. That's so unlike the media in the science community to overblow something to try to scare the living crap out of you. And all of a sudden, we've got third graders in Maryland wearing masks. If I don't laugh, I'm going to just, explode. Because I know and you know what that mask wearing does to kids. Scientists are now finding no sign it was more likely to cause infection or severe disease. Body of the story, BA.286 was feared to have mutated to infect vaccinated and recently infected people with ease, prompting warnings from U.S. and global health agencies. Those fears, they say, spooked several colleges and businesses into bringing back mask mandates, while health officials in New York encourage people to utilize face coverings over Labor Day weekend. But early results from lab tests carried out in the U.S., Sweden, and China suggest that those warnings may have been overblown and that this variant may actually be another scariant and not the second coming of Omicron. The tests found that antibodies from vaccinated people and those who had recovered from an infection within the last 6 months were just as effective against BA.286, enabling them to stop infection as they were with other variants. I know some people that got this version of COVID, and most people, I think, 4 or 5 people that I've known, they've all said, I've been much worse than this with either previous bouts with COVID or with, like regulation flu and that kind of a thing. So, I feel like we keep, I don't, but I feel like there's a lot of folks out there who fall prey to, the hyperbolic reporting of the media when these kinds of things happen, because they're right. The Daily Mail is absolutely right to, utilize the term scariant, because what they're trying to do is scare the living crap out of people to make them obedient, quite frankly. You've got, Biden out there saying that he's going to wear a mask. And best part of that whole story, we were talking about this earlier, best part of the story is Joe Biden saying that he was going to wear a mask because his wife, Jill, has COVID. Well, then what does he do? He goes into this this event where he's giving the Medal of Honor to a really old Vietnam veteran who did incredible things during the war, and so he gave that person the Medal of Honor. And Joe, if you see the video of this, maybe I'll tweet it at Dan Mandis Show. So Joe, he's right in his element because he's got to get really close to this guy. And everybody in that event who is watching Joe attempt to put this Medal of Honor around the neck of this really old Vietnam veteran. Everybody's thinking the same thing, Joe. Number one, you came in wearing a mask. You're not wearing a mask now. That's number one. And number two, you're getting awfully close there, buddy. And so now, again, everybody in that room had to be thinking the same thing, which is, well, let's see how long, before that guy gets COVID, if ultimately Joe Biden gets COVID. And I don't want, the president, I don't want him to get COVID. I don't have some sick, twisted, weird whatever about, wanting people like the president to get COVID, even though they were, mandating vaccines and masks and all that kind of stuff. No, I don't want anyone to get COVID. But unfortunately, we are going to get COVID, and we're going to be living alongside COVID for years because there's always going to be, different strains. Now, hopefully, at some point, it goes away. But right now, what we're seeing is this new variant, BA.286. It's weaker than previous ones, and that's part of the deal, is that oftentimes these strains from the main virus, they are actually weaker than the previous strains. So there's no, at least for me, there's no reason to panic. I don't believe... Listen, you want to go wear a mask, knock yourself out, wear a mask. But it doesn't seem like it's necessary for this particular variant or, quite frankly, any variant. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. By the way, if you missed any part of the show, you can always check out past segments in their entirety, redeyeradioshow.com. My name is Dan Mandis. I've been filling in for Gary and Eric this week, and I'm here the rest of this week as well. The gents return Sunday night, Monday morning. By the way, earlier we were talking about this ridiculous notion that Donald Trump is going to be able to they're going to be able to keep Donald Trump off of the ballot in various states by invoking the 14th Amendment. This is from Red State. The Supreme Court is going to take up the first 14th Amendment challenge to Donald Trump's candidacy. This came out actually last night. The U.S. Supreme Court is poised to take up the issue of whether the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution bars former President Donald Trump from running for president in 2024. The case originates with alleged GOP write-in candidate John Anthony Castro of Texas. So far, he has filed lawsuits challenging Trump's eligibility for office in 8 states: Wyoming, Utah, Oklahoma, North Carolina, West Virginia, Montana, Kansas, and Idaho. A lawsuit by Castro in Florida has already been dismissed. And so that's going to be the big question, of course, is, I seriously doubt that this very conservative Supreme Court will say that, Donald Trump does not belong on the ballot. They say, again, this is Red State, they say that Castro's lawsuit is indeed a long shot. The bar that he has to cross is to prove that he is personally injured by Donald Trump's candidacy. Well, let's be honest. I mean, if you want to look at the behavior of the Democrats, now this guy's a Republican, but if you want to look at the behavior of the Democrats when it comes to Donald Trump's candidacy, they do act like they are personally injured by his candidacy. They continue to act like they were personally injured by his presidency. Even though, quite frankly, I believe that Trump supporters and people who, voted for Donald Trump, we could more legit say that we were personally injured by what the left did to Donald Trump during his 4 years in office. I mean, they impeached him twice, and he was always under investigation. So at least for me, I mean, if we want to go down the road of, which side was more personally injured during Donald Trump's presidency, clearly, at least it seems to me, clearly, it would be the side of Republicans and conservatives. We were seriously injured because our president that we voted for and that he legit won, he was hamstringed during the entire 4 years in office thanks to the Democrats.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.